All right, good morning and welcome to the Exploring Virtual Reality to Enhance STEM Learning in After School and Summer Programming. My name is Aisha Spradley, OSC Professional Learning Coordinator, and I will be the moderator for this session. I'd like to now introduce you to today's facilitator, Jennifer Mowry.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. How are you? I see a couple faces and some smiles. That feels good. So thank you for the welcome. My name is Jen Mowry. I am full-time faculty at Harrisburg University. I am a professor of project management and agile methodologies here for our graduate students. I also teach a little bit of undergrad here. I teach in our MEBA program, which stands for Management, Entrepreneurship, Business, and Administration. So those kids that are looking to maybe be business entrepreneurs, I get to work with them too. And what's been interesting along my journey is teaching these classes. I've had the opportunity to learn about how immersive technology is entering into those industries. But as faculty, we get to practice in the classroom, right? So in 2021, I became a member of what we call our XR, or Extended Reality Task Force, here at Harrisburg University, and have had a lot of experiences with both teachers and industry, incorporating virtual reality and other immersive technology into the classroom. So that's going to be what we talk about today. My plan is to take a very beginner's approach to immersive tech and virtual reality and share just a couple of my experiences along the way. I did a little research prior to showing up today where I can just share what others are saying about learning outcomes when using virtual reality in the classroom. So we'll go ahead and just advance the slide one time. What I wanted to do is, just like a teacher does, kind of start off with our learning objectives for the morning. Really, it's this idea of what do you walk away with at the end of the hour today? And what I hope is that by the end of the hour, you'll have a better understanding of the benefits of incorporating immersive technology, specifically virtual reality, into learning environments generally. But I have taken a pretty specific focus here on STEM education, and trying to look at it through the lens of K through 8, maybe even some K through 12 stuff pops up here as well. Then I'll spend just a little bit of time talking through some different options for hardware and software, at least so that you can hear the names, and that can be kind of where maybe you spin off next if this is something that you want to incorporate into your curricula. And then I did pick just 3 examples of maybe different ways that you could right away incorporate VR into a lesson plan. And using, some of my project management background, I took an opportunity at the end to kind of just break down some steps. If you decide that you want to build a lesson plan that incorporates VR, here's some of the process that you could think about to make that happen. So that is our journey that we're heading on here in the 11 o'clock hour Eastern time. And we can go ahead and advance, because what I thought I would do is start off with a little bit of a story, okay? And I used generative AI tools to create this image this morning, just because I wanted to kind of fill your mind with the picture of the future, okay? Now, this isn't exactly where we are with the technology now, but just think for a second as you kind of gaze into this picture about what a classroom could look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And last night I was kind of writing this story for you to get this image. So let me kind of refer to my notes a little bit, hear me out on the story. We'll look into the future, and then we'll come back into present day. So picture maybe just for a moment that instead of being in 2024 right now, we're in 2044, okay? It could come faster, but for the sake of my story, let's pretend we're in 2044. And you walk into a classroom, but it looks nothing like the classrooms of the past, right? Gone are the rows of desks and the whiteboards, even the textbooks, all right? Instead, students are standing, they're moving freely around the room, And each of them might just be wearing some type of lightweight augmented reality glasses, or even, guys, an immersive contact lens, okay? And they're not just learning in this space, and this is a key takeaway, they're experiencing, all right? So maybe in the corner of the room, there's a group of students that are virtually visiting the surface of Mars. And through the lenses of their AR glasses, they see the red terrain stretch out before them, maybe some dusty rocks or craters, and they're visible in this stunning detail. And they're not just memorizing facts about Mars, they're really conducting scientific experiments in this simulated lab. They're collecting maybe some data on the planet's atmosphere, and they're working together as a team of classmates to solve challenges that could be faced by real astronauts, okay? So these students, they're collaborating with their peers, maybe even from across the globe, right? Because we don't have those geographic boundaries in this space. And they're all really working on this shared virtual environment. Now, in another part of this classroom of the future, the students are maybe virtually shadowing a doctor in a hospital. Maybe the student watches in real time as the doctor consults with patients, diagnoses conditions, even perform surgeries. And, with just a few taps, this student could maybe rewind, pause, or dive deeper into a particular medical procedure. And then what, once seemed like an unreachable career, is now something that this student can observe, explore, and practice in an immersive and a controlled environment, all right? Now, one more. Meanwhile, in the center of this room, okay, we have a group of students that are participating in maybe some type of conflict resolution simulation where they are transported into a virtual boardroom, okay, where together as a team, they have to solve some type of crisis, maybe between two financial companies. And each student maybe plays a role as a CEO or a mediator or a stakeholder. And they have to use some social emotional skills to communicate effectively to reach some type of solution. And now these aren't just hypothetical lessons from a textbook, right? These are interactive experiences where the consequences of each decision that's made in the classroom is going to be felt in real time, all right? It's kind of like giving me a little goosebumps even just saying it, okay? Now, in this classroom, this classroom of the future, learning isn't confined to what's written on the page. It's about seeing, it's about doing, and it's really about feeling, okay? So subjects that maybe once felt abstract, like math, like science, history, even that social emotional learning, now they're becoming alive and they're becoming tangible. The lines between school and the real world have kind of blurred together. And students are learning by immersing themselves in the world around them, both real and virtual. So this was my opening story, and it was to just really give you a glimpse of what the future is starting to look like and definitely what it could look like. And it's really not as far off as we might think, okay? The technology that we just imagined here in the beginning of our session, virtual reality, augmented reality, immersive simulations, these already exist today. And while it may seem super futuristic, schools around the world are starting to adopt these tools, and they're really trying to give students a deeper and really more engaging learning experience. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to explore how you two can start slowly introducing immersive technology into your STEM curriculum. And again, this idea of helping our students not only learn concepts, but truly experiencing them. So I hope that that was useful. We can go ahead and advance now. And I wanted to start off with just some of the research. And, we won't dive into these research studies deeply here today, What I've done is, number one, my slide deck will be available to any participants probably later today or within the day or so. And I've hyperlinked all of my research to the end of the deck, kind of like a toolkit for you. So if you want to go out and look at these studies deeper, if one's really important to you, you'll definitely have the opportunity to do that. But what I saw in the research putting this together and specifically going out into the journals and looking at STEM learning when we incorporate VR, improved task completion rate was a big thing that popped out in the data. And this first stat, what I want to call out in it is that today we'll talk about how virtual reality, it doesn't necessarily always have to be the headset experience. There's also a desktop experience that students can have as well. But this first statistic is saying that students in an immersive VR, they're going to have a 68% success rate compared to 50% of those that are using the desktop VR. So it's an important thing to hear just because when they're actually in the headset and experiencing that 3D environment and being able to use their hands to move and touch and expand and contract different objects, that's when you see some of that task completion data rise. Enhanced problem solving skills kept coming up in the literature as well. The problem solving abilities and learning outcomes are just going to go up. And also, we're increasing motivation and engagement per the data when we're using VR in the classroom. I found one specific to 7th grade math students using game-based immersive VR. They were also showing not only math achievement increasing, but also just their overall learning motivation increasing. So anyway, these types of statistics that I'll use throughout the presentation are linked at the end, and you'll have access to those. So we'll go ahead and move on. And the next slide here, this is just some industry data that I wanted to share with you because I think it's important to know like what's happening with the growth of overall virtual reality and immersive technology across the globe. And let me just first, we'll start kind of fresh with a definition of virtual reality, because virtual reality is going to be an immersive technology that's really creating a simulated environment where users can interact with virtual objects and scenarios, okay? And this webinar this morning is going to be primarily based on virtual reality technology. However, you'll hear, and even in the opening story, some other terminology such as augmented reality and mixed reality. And you can see the key on the chart that I have on the slide. When we're talking about growth in the industry, you'll see that virtual reality kind of leads the way, that darker bar, but the others, augmented reality and mixed reality, are beginning to grow as well. So I think the big takeaway from this slide is that, by 2030, we're going to continue to see a very large amount of growth in this, not just in education, right? This data is showing across all industry, but an increase of 23.9% from 2024, where we are right now, to 2030. And I believe that increase in dollars was about 120 some billion. So we can go ahead and advance, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how big the growth will continue to be in this field. All right, so I think we went maybe back. Can we go this way? Just one more, perfect, right there. So one of my tasks this morning was to also just make you aware of some of the different hardware and software that is available to us as teachers should we wish to begin exploring the opportunity of incorporating some type of immersive technology into our classroom. And, I'll just take a second to talk about that picture in the top left corner. So here at Harrisburg University, we team with the two companies that I have their logo on the screen, Engage and also Victory XR. So the picture there, you see an avatar of a teacher, and he or she has blown up an immersive version of the human heart. Maybe, or no, I think that's actually a frog heart now that I zoom in there. It's a frog's heart. Down on the table there, you see that a frog is being dissected. Now, this is something when I was a kid in school, we got the opportunity to actually do a dissection with a live frog. But now we have the opportunity to maybe make that more available to more kids without having to obtain the frog because we can create this as an immersive lab. So I just wanted to call out that that picture is a version of an immersive classroom where a frog dissection is taking place. You can kind of zoom in to the different pieces of the anatomy. Student would have the opportunity to kind of drag these pieces into different elements of their learning space. You can also see that some of the knowledge has been embedded in. So you have definitions, charts, and such. And that classroom is powered by Victory XR. So that is some of the software that's out there. I have others listed. Google Expeditions, Labster is another one that we use here at the university for more of our health sciences and anatomy. And then as far as hardware, the picture that I have in the center circle there, that is a picture of the MetaQuest 3. That is the one that is being awarded as a prize for attendance for these webinars. And this is the headset that we use the most here at the university as well. Prices have become more and more affordable for MetaQuest 3. When I got my first one, I want to say it was closer to $800, but they've dropped significantly. A MetaQuest 3 is just shy of $300 right now. So it puts it in perspective, and the price does continue to drop. I show a 15% decrease since 2021 is about average, and they expect that that's going to continue to drop. So anyway, these are just some names. I have these linked at the end of the slide too. So if any of you have interest in going out and taking a look at other hardware and software entry points in education, you'll have those links available. We'll go ahead and advance to the next slide. So some of what I wanted to think about today was just different VR activities that could be useful to you. It's my understanding that the group here may be involved in out-of-school learning, like after school and summer programming specific to STEM. So I already talked a little bit about the virtual dissection labs. This could be an opportunity where students get, like I was saying, that opportunity to explore anatomy. This could be anatomy of plants or animals. And again, it takes away the cost and just the need of real specimen. And may even make it a more interactive learning experience because again, they can kind of zoom in and really look deeply into those parts of the plants and animals. Now, an activity that I haven't talked about yet that we use here at the university too is what we call an engineering sandbox. And this is just building an environment in an immersive space where students have the opportunity to build and test maybe structures or machines in a virtual environment. Here at the university, there's a lot of lab equipment that different science fields use. And I've heard some discussions about how, you know, we haven't had the opportunity to offer all students this equipment to utilize and learn hands-on in the past. But when we can provide this really high-tech equipment in an immersive space, it allows more and more students that may otherwise have not had the opportunity to get hands-on with this type of equipment and technology, the opportunity to learn on it. The other example that I have here for environmental science, immersive technology is amazing to explore ecosystems, things like analyzing water quality and just simulating environmental impacts. We've had some summer campers here at the university that have gone on virtual field trips to different parts of the planet Obviously trips that we wouldn't be able to afford to maybe take them on in real life, but they've got to explore volcanoes and different glaciers, different river basins, going into different caves. So again, it's creating these immersive experiences that they would maybe otherwise never get to see. So for that, I believe these opportunities are beautiful. If we could advance the slide just one time, I want to spend just a little bit more focus here on the benefits of VR, maybe in after school and summer programs specifically. And for this, again, I went out to the journals just to take a peek at what's been published by researchers in the space. Hopefully this just serves as some motivation. Maybe it entices you to take a look at how it can enhance your curriculum and really build these learning outcomes that we all desire as educators, right? So I found definitely more data about the increased learning experience. And when I talk about the learning experience here, what I mean is that students have an increased student satisfaction. They walk out of the classroom happier about the lesson because they were able to get hands-on in an immersive space. They felt more excited, more engaged, more connected with the learning topic. So student satisfaction, self-efficacy, and just that overall engagement when compared to traditional learning methods. The second note that I found important is that higher cognitive engagement. So students using virtual reality technology in class had significantly higher emotional engagement and concentration. And those types of factors are going to, again, improve our learning outcomes. Now, this third statistic, I had to go back and read the article a couple times because I couldn't believe it. There is a 570% increase in our improved performance in complex tasks. I couldn't believe it, guys. And, I'm sure this number varies across a couple studies, but 570 is just a telling sign that when we use immersive VR training, it's going to reduce the learning time for complex tasks by these large percentages. So we have faster task completion and improved technical skills. I'll stop for a second and just quickly share a personal experience that happened recently. On campus, we were hosting the Department of Defense here. And we had a very large room dedicated to sharing immersive technology solutions with the DoD. And we had a flight simulation set up in our auditorium where members of the various branches of military were coming in to check out our immersive tech. And we had a couple soldiers in full uniform come up to our station, put on the headset, and it was a step-by-step instruction on how to start a plane, how to get all the systems in check, your pre-takeoff tasks, all the way to getting this plane down the runway and in the air. And I had people that have been in the Air Force tell me, wow, if there would have been this type of flight training for me in my early entry, I can't imagine how much quicker I would have learned some of the skills necessary to fly a jet. So it was just a little, on-site in-person confirmation from Air Force personnel about how they witnessed right here on campus improved performance of complex tasks by using flight simulation technology in an immersive headset. And then finally here, knowledge acquisition and also retention. So there's significant publications out there talking about immersive VR-based instruction. And again, it's enhanced engagement, it's enhancing emotional involvement. Remember, we're trying to create that learning feeling in the experience. And this knowledge retention comes along with them being able to emotionally connect with the content that we're sharing with them in the immersive space. We can go ahead and move forward again. So I told you in the very beginning of the session that I come from a project management, specifically agile methodology background. So I really think of everything kind of in an iterative sense. And I think if you decide that you want to start developing some type of VR-based activity, you should definitely go into it with an agile mindset. These things are going to take time. They're going to take learning. They're going to take feedback from your students to improve iteration over iteration. So I spent some time just this week thinking through, what would be a good step-by-step guide for folks that are super interested in incorporating VR, but we just don't even know where to start, and we don't want to get overwhelmed with the technology either. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes just kind of talking through what I believe to be some best practice for getting started and building a plan. So number one here, I believe that we should start small. It doesn't have to be a full class. It doesn't have to be a full lesson. It can just simply be in the beginning a very small activity that we incorporate into a lesson. It can maybe only be just a couple minutes, but based on some of the literature we're looking at, even those couple minutes could create that wow moment for your students that they walk away excited to learn more. So again, starting small means that we're just focusing on a single part of our lesson because we don't want to overwhelm ourselves with the technology. We want to keep it very manageable when we're just beginning to integrate it into the curriculum. Because when we start small, then what we're doing as teachers, but we're also doing this for our students, is we're trying to build confidence with the technology, right? We want to feel good when we're offering this as part of our lesson plan. And to build that confidence, what we want to do is test the activity, maybe before the kiddos come in, but then also you're testing it with them. You're learning from the students by gathering the students' feedback. And then you take that feedback and you can incorporate it into the next time because this is refining the experience, right? We have this opportunity to learn from trying. And then as we become more comfortable with the integration of VR-based activities, now we can begin to expand gradually, right? Once you've had some positive results and you have your students saying, wow, that was awesome, or wow, I really learned something new, and you see their faces start to light up, this is going to build that confidence. And now you'll want to see how you can maybe broaden your scope by incorporating more VR activities into your lesson. So I feel like just a big takeaway today is to start small, understand that you need to gain the feedback, and then it'll grow over time should you choose to keep going. Fourth one down here in blue, it says leverage existing resources. So maybe you utilize some existing tools and platforms before thinking about having to build your own content. And that's why I thought it was so important to let you know that here at Harrisburg University, even we go out and work with partners in the virtual reality space. Because why create it on our own if we can leverage things that already exist? So that's why I brought up Engage and Victory XR. Those are just the two partners that we use to help leverage existing resources so that we can make this concept a reality for our students. And then finally here with the project planning, I have collaborate and share. So really, I think that it's important to work as a community when we're trying to incorporate this type of technology. Talking to maybe some folks that have already done it, or becoming social with folks that are also interested in doing it, but maybe haven't incorporated it yet. When we engage with other educators, we get this opportunity to, number one, exchange ideas on how we want to implement it, right? And then once we've gotten started, we also have an opportunity to use that community of educators to share successful practices. And that type of conversation is going to be hopefully what sets us up for success as we keep iterating forward. We can go ahead and just move forward a little bit. I guess what I want to do today is hopefully boost your confidence a little bit about how can you really make this happen. If you want to incorporate VR into the classroom, what are some next steps for implementation? Again, I hope that I hit it hard, but this idea of starting small, do not overwhelm yourselves with, these huge immersive environments in the beginning, or thinking that you need lots of hardware and lots of software. You can start very lean with this process. Collaborate, again, working with not only your colleagues, like I mentioned, but there could be other schools, universities, or companies that are happy to be a part of your education journey with immersive technology, and maybe we can partner. And then one thing that I haven't talked completely about, but is tracking success. So maybe having some type of survey for the students, or some way to just capture a little bit of data so that you can monitor your own student engagement for learning outcomes. And when we begin to collect some of this quantitative data, maybe this is also going to help us justify further investment in the technology. Maybe this is things that you can take to the leadership at the school or the program that you work with. You can say, hey, I am seeing these incredible results, and it's because of these results that now I'd like to take that small start, and I want to make that small start a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. That's definitely what we've done here at the university, and what we continue to do. We continue to justify our learning outcomes so that we can grow the technology that we get to share with our students here, and also the community at large. If we could go ahead and advance the slide again. I thought it was important to just talk through some potential barriers and those solutions, because even as I've worked with faculty here at my work, some of the resistance to entering into the virtual reality space is usually the three I have bulleted there as potential barriers. It's going to be too expensive for this to happen in my classroom. I'm not going to be able to gain the technical expertise necessary to implement this in my classroom, or, the classroom setup in space, I'm just not going to have the resources, maybe physically either. I think my job here today as an early adopter in the classroom is just try to talk about how we can break down some of those potential barriers. So hopefully, you can start with some affordable VR solutions. I mentioned how the Meta Quest 3 is coming down in cost. It's making it more practical to bring one into your learning environment. There's also the ability to get your hands on used VR headsets, which I know some school systems are doing for about half of the cost of a new one. There's also the ability at some universities like HU to borrow the equipment, so that you can at least have the initial experience and begin documenting some of those success metrics. And maybe you've even heard of the Google Cardboard. We don't use it here at the university, but I have read some instances where secondary school systems have brought in the Google Cardboard. It's maybe about $15 per cardboard headset. Now you use the phone, but again, it's just looking at these ways to get in, this low cost of entry, and it does exist. So just so that you can begin getting comfortable. I mentioned partnering with, either a tech vendor for support. Usually the packages and licensing is at a discounted rate for educators, which is also a key to making this practical. And then another thing that we do here at the university is we use small group rotations for limited resources. Picture the day where maybe the projector was on the cart and the cart got moved all around the school, right? At least that's how it was when I was in school. We shared the cart with the tech on it. And that's kind of what's happening even with the immersive technology here today. It's going on the cart, and we're sharing it across disciplines. So we've put, a nice stack of technology on some carts, but now health sciences can use it. I use it here in project management. We use it in biology. but thinking about how we can come together across learning disciplines to justify the need for the technology, and then coming up with really resourceful ways to share that technology or roll around the cart. All right, so if we could advance the slide just again. I pulled a small video from Victory XR, our partner's website. It's only 50 seconds long, but I just felt like it would be useful for you all to experience a deep visual aid of what this could look like in a learning environment. So the things that you'll see in this video, let me just foreshadow it a bit so that you can process it while you're watching. They're going to talk about how you build the self, so the avatar in the learning space. And both teacher and student would have the opportunity in a lot of these learning environments to create an avatar that kind of looks and feels like me, or maybe my alter ego. That's fine too. Maybe I would go with purple hair because that would be more fun. Okay, and that's totally fine. It gives us a chance to really express ourselves. And once you build that avatar, then what you're also looking at is what these immersive rooms look like. A traditional classroom is kind of like, my room here in the campus, the four walls, bookcase, and the desk. But our classrooms do not need to look like that in an immersive space. You could put it on the surface of the moon. You could put the classroom underwater. You could put it in a high-tech learning lab. So kind of take in the customization of the avatar, take in the learning environment that is really anything that you can imagine, and then also take in these objects. What they're called is IFX objects, but it's really the learning material. So on the cover, you see a brain, right? This brain could be what we're studying in the immersive space. And again, you can stretch it, you can shrink it, you can dive into different portions of the brain. You could have the brain go into the cadaver, come out of the cadaver, rotate it 360. You'll also see in this video a little bit more of the frog dissection that I mentioned earlier. That would be an IFX object that you would place into your immersive classroom so that your students could interact with that image, that 3D virtual image in class. So I'll stop talking. I just wanted to kind of give you a couple flags of what to watch for in this 50-second video. We'll play it now and I'll come right back on to finish us up. So anyway, it's a super quick video, but a moving image is worth a couple thousand words. So there you get just a little bit of an idea. We can go ahead and advance the video there. And let me start to wrap things up because I do want to have myself available for some questions and answers towards the end as well. But what I'm hoping is that you walk away today with just a little bit more maybe of an understanding and excitement about how VR could transform STEM learning. It really it does, per the data, per the literature, increase engagement. It's helping with, student retention, learning retention, and collaboration, definitely. I hope that you're starting to feel a little bit about how this can become real for me, that it is affordable, but we have to start lean and we have to measure and then justify to scale. I want to be able to, really stress that it's not going to be maybe a big implementation in the beginning. It's get your hands on it and iterate towards scaling and growth. And then finally here, this last key takeaway, empower your students. We're building confidence all together when we're integrating any type of technology into the classroom, right? So we're trying to make it fun. We're trying to make it meaningful. We don't want to stress ourselves out or the students out with the difficulty of bringing a new piece of technology into the room. We want to make it playful. We can go ahead and move forward just one more. So what I did is I promised that toolkit. So all of the data and literature that I had cited at the very beginning on slide 4, I have those articles here, should you wish to dive deeper. I did the same thing if we advance for slide 8. Remember that one with the 500 and some percent improvement on task completion? That's nuts. And then at the next slide, I also put together just a couple hyperlinks for you. If we advance again, this is Victory XR, our partner that really specializes in the learning environments. Their links here. Engage is the other partner that we use for the actual spaces, like the immersive classrooms. And I also had a citation there for that industry growth slide that I used at the very beginning, just to show how big this industry is and will continue to be. I think that is it. So I will open it up for questions and we'll see how that goes. I appreciate everybody's attention. I hope this was useful.
There's been a few questions in the chat. The first one, Matthew answered, can you make avatars on all VR sets? To which he answered yes. Another question was, what grades or age ranges in VR like this applicable to, and what classroom sizes are reasonably able to accommodate this tech?
Yeah, so I hear that Matthew's here. I didn't see the chat, but that is good. So I was reading some articles just this morning where the technology seems to be recommended for kiddos about 12 or 13 and up. At least that's what the tech's been built for. I found that on Meta's website. But I'll tell you, some of my personal research, I've looked at the applications of like kids that might be healing in a hospital and they'll use VR technology to help on that healing journey. So I have seen applications where VR has been used on younger kiddos too. So as far as age appropriateness, I think there's still some research being done in that space, but I do see the 12-13 number as the recommended one on the technology websites. What was the part 2 of that question? I'm sorry.
I think you answered it.
Oh,
And
okay.
then, and there's another question. Do you have a personal favorite when it comes to VR headsets?
Yeah, so that MetaQuest 3 is pretty impressive, not only because of the affordability, but also that one has mixed reality functionality. So what that means is that previous iterations of the hardware, when you went into the headset, you were in there, you didn't have awareness or pass through into your physical space. With the MetaQuest 3, it has that mixed reality or pass through capability where you can now have a mixed reality experience as well. I'll give you just a quick example of that. We were demoing the MetaQuest 3 for nurses here on campus. And what we did is we were standing in a circle together. And in the room, what we did is we put a skeletal system. You can maybe picture that from a doctor's office where the skeleton's kind of hanging on the pole. But that skeleton was it was mixed reality in our room. The skeleton wasn't really with us, but we could see it through our headset. They could move the bones off of that skeleton. I was joking with these guys the other day. I said I had to tell my class, stop throwing bones in class because the bones could actually, come off of the skeleton and the nurses were playing around. But we were still in our room at the campus, but we were having this mixed reality experience with the skeleton and the bones. And, think about how I'm making, some fun out of it, but think about how you walk away from an experience like that and you're like, wow, I know what a femur is now because I threw it across the room. So that's my favorite one, just because I think it has all the function it needs for a learning environment. And it's not too expensive. Thanks for that question.
Was something created to replace Google Expeditions since it is no longer supported?
Yeah, Matthew, do you want to take that one? Because I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think I know the answer off the top of my head.
Yeah. So how's my mic? We good? Okay.
Yep, you're
So
good.
yes. So there's I guess I'll call it a host of applications, and I guess maybe we'll add one or two at the end of the slide and tweak that, and we'll add a few of the other applications. But Engage and Victory XR are kind of the main platform right now that has everything from the virtual reality to mixed reality. There are a few others, Eon Reality, that focused primarily in the AR space with like the tablets and things like that that have.
All right. Our next question is, how effective can generic brands be when compared to more authentic brands?
Sorry, it got super quiet. Was the question about the brain?
Brands. I'm so sorry. My microphone
I was
is.
like, I don't know if I can get into the brain details. Right, I might need another prep moment. No, go ahead. What was it again? The brand of what?
It said, how effective can generic brands be when compared to more authentic brands?
So the brands of like hardware and software. Is that where we're heading here? Yeah. I can try, but Matthew, do you want to take this one since you've done some hardware cross compare?
I think Matthew's having some challenges with his sound. So
Okay. Yeah,
anytime
so
that comes through, just unmute yourself and let us know.
Oh, do you want me to keep going?
yeah, we
How
use
about now? Can you hear me now?
oh
Yes.
great. There he is.
There we go.
Recording.
Yeah, some reason the camera just stopped working and I was using the mic on there. So, I think the question was generic brand versus non-generic. Are we talking headsets here? Or we talking other types of equipment?
I think it's probably more
Headsets. Okay.
hardware.
So
Yeah.
headsets, there really is one. The MetaQuest 3 really is the base headset. It's the cheapest cost. Some of the other ones do, but the firmware is, we've had more technical hurdles with it. Whereas the MetaQuest 3 is really the base one that works. People don't get sick using it, has the full capabilities. If you're going desktop and you have the funds for it, in particular, if you have students that really get nauseous no matter what they're doing, then you can go something like a Valve Index. But then you're talking $1,000 and needing a $1,500 computer. So for right now, for education, 9 times out of 10, I would say get the Quest 3, maybe the Quest 3S. We haven't really ran that through yet since it just came out a few weeks ago. But there aren't really any other options that are cost effective other than the Quest 3 right now for education, Quest 3S. I will note that the Quest 2, I consider, I honestly like to call it trash at this point. Over 50% of people would get sick within an hour. There were a range of people who could use it, but it caused so much eye strain, and just a tiredness in students because just the frame rates and things like that in it, that I would say the Quest 3 really was a starting point for VR being mainstream. And I did my master's project on that and had over 70 people do a half-hour demo and really saw that big difference between anything older and the Quest 3. So I would really start with that. If there's a big reason for the others, I would say get 1 or 2 headsets, test it out if you really think you need one of the other ones. China does have its own that just came out that is pretty good. Valve or Vive just came out with another one, but you're also talking close to $1,000. So it really depends on a number of other factors.
And speaking of eye strains, are there any other potential safety concerns when using VR or XR equipment?
Yeah, so it's a great question there. Safety concerns. So start with you kind of need a clear space. If you're using just VR, then you have to make sure you properly set up your square and you don't have people walking around in that unless you have a third party really watching them. If you put on boxing, for example, it is kind of easy for kids to get outside that box, and hit someone because they can't see the people around them. So for demos like that, you need someone standing next to them. But that is partially solved, or that is solved if you're going mixed reality. So if you're going mixed reality, you can see everything around you, and so you don't have the safety concerns. And that's really why groups like Meta are pushing into the mixed reality space, because it drops a lot of the main hurdles that people have with VR.
Another question was, outside of STEM, are there other core subjects like ELA that you're aware of that educators are using VR sets to help teach their students?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
ELA is English second language, and geography. Let's see what else counts outside of English. Just English in general, because you can be in these different environments. You can be in a restaurant. You can hand them a fork. You know, so I've used it. I've seen it used, as far as teaching things like that. I'm big in learning Spanish. My wife's Colombian, and she's a English as a second language teacher. So there's definitely a need for that, and it's really been the cost issue has been the only big hurdle, because they have to have a $500 headset. With the 3S, it's down to 300. The Quest 2, like I've said, just wasn't good enough even at 300. But now with the 3S, I think we've hit that $300 point. Instead of else, it's just $500. So it's starting to be open to other fields as well.
I wanted to quickly mention that I use it for team building too. And, that's more of a softer skill than what we're talking about here in STEM. But, even just playing a game can help build teams. We do that with adults here at the university, just getting people all, collaborating on solving a mission. Just recently, Matthew and I hosted a demo session where we had adults playing laser tag in a mixed reality in a conference room here at the university. Laser tag, you don't really walk away with maybe a STEM lesson, but you walk away with this ability to work together as a team to complete a mission. There's a lot of opportunities to think about ways that we can incorporate it into fields other than STEM for sure. I've done a couple presentations for project managers, since that's my primary field, of how global teams can get together and collaborate on project execution in an immersive space. So I really just think that the possibility for incorporating it across all disciplines is, maybe infinite.
Is there a recommended time frame that you should be using the headset per day in order for the experience to be effective?
Yeah, so I don't think much more than an hour a day is necessary. And I think that's what's recommended on some of the websites that I was looking at. But another thing that I'll address with the time per day is also, I pulled up the chat now and I was reading about how do you facilitate with large groups. Say you have a class of, 25 to 30 people, but only one or two headsets. Creating a space where some people are interacting with the immersive technology while maybe they're doing something else in other stations of the room is a great way to leverage limited resources and keep the duration of time that people are using the technology to a minimum. Mainly what I've experienced is folks talking about the strain on their neck a little bit, because you figure if you put something that weighs just a bit on the front of your face, your neck is kind of compensating for that weight. So one of the things that we recommend is just trying to balance that neck strain by only being in for no longer than an hour. And that's usually enough, because what you're really trying to do is just create that wow factor that we were talking about earlier. Matthew, do you have anything else to add to duration?
Yeah, so I would say initial demo, for my survey, I used a 30 to 45 minutes. If you want a breadth of experiences, so they get that kind of wow of VR, that really can take half an hour to 45 minutes for an intro to VR. Otherwise, it depends on the headset. So if you have a more powerful headset, something like an Index or a Big Screen Beyond, there isn't really the eye strain issue as much. So you can have 2-hour sessions. It can be a whole class, and it won't matter. But Otherwise, most headsets, the battery only lasts an hour and a half. So you're kind of constrained to that. And it depends whether you buy the extra battery pack or not. So it really is technology limited at this point, with the 3 and above. Before it was eye strain, whereas now it's leaning towards the issue is battery life unless it's plugged in.
Another question from the chat was, is Robot Lab Classrooms VR Expeditions 2.0 a good choice?
I'll get back to the second. I had not heard of this one yet, so I'll give you that in a few seconds.
All right. And then also, are software updates available in order to have the best and newest performance, even if you have an aged device?
Software is constantly updating. It's always available. The Meta Quests have had dramatic improvements between cycles sometimes, with different things like hand tracking, where they add a lot of ability to not need controllers for a lot of interactions. But as far as devices goes, I pretty much say anything below the Quest 2 and below really were barely functional. It was to give you a here's what's coming in the future. The Quest 2 is really the starting point, and the technology is going to go so fast. It's kind of a wait and see with how fast that goes. But I would call anything before Quest 3, unless it's like an index, a desktop unit, as poor examples of what VR is today.
And our last question was, can Google goggles with unsupported Google Expeditions be used for any other purpose?
So I would lean towards no. And also in response to the Robot Lab Classroom, based on what I saw in the headsets used, I do honestly point to everyone to say the Quest 3 is the starting point. So if that something like Robot Lab's Classroom VR, if you're not working with them to get the Quest 3 or 3S or above, then I would say wait another year until they have it, or your budget allows for it. Because what you want is you want to buy something that you're going to continue using for the next 5 years. And anything before the Quest 3, other than desktop unit like Valve Index, as I've stated, was before that limit where it wouldn't cause eye strain and things like that. So I would skip most other systems until they have at least a 3S or comparable. So you need that 90 frames a second and things like that to not cause eye strain.
All right. And that concludes our session for today. If there's no other questions, we hope you have enjoyed the presentation and found the strategies for incorporating VR and XR and OST spaces valuable. Our next session, leveraging extended reality for social and emotional learning and career exploration in after-school and summer programs, will be on Thursday, October 24th, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Thank you for joining us today. And also, we'll be following up before the close of business today with a link to fill out the evaluation and get your Act 48 credits. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.